to a new episode of We're All Here Together. Today I'm going to be talking about emotional pain. So usually or often we can recognize we're in a pattern of suppressing it or distracting ourselves away from it or projecting it, and or you may not know you're doing that at all. I didn't know I was doing that at all. And that's the trippy part about the shadow and your dark stuff. You can't really see it. Sometimes you can. Like I said, you might know, like, oh, wow, I'm making this choice to distract myself so I don't have to feel this. But sometimes it's happening so quickly and has happened for so long you don't even know. And I am hopeful today to give you some perspectives you can use in moving through stuff that is present or old. And what's interesting about the old stuff is if you haven't really worked it, it is still sort of present. It's not necessarily present in the ways you might fear, but it will show up in, from my vantage point. So these are all notes from my lab. I've been in the lab since, I guess, 2016, pretty full time. And I've been blessed to overcome a lot of my shit. And then I also work with clients on similar-ish paths, as well as kind of receive things directly. And when I do this, I mean I see things from spirit there. I receive downloads, words, images, etc. And that's to say some of the ideas I have aren't even mine. I'm just a pass-through entity for them. And let's see. So, and I don't think that is special. I think that many people have that ability and or use it, and they may have always done it, and so they don't even recognize that they're doing it, so they don't count it as a skill. If you do start to explore, do I have this? Does this work for me? Then it can open other doors. So I do encourage that. Good morning. Good morning. So today I'm talking about emotional pain, management-ish, interaction-ish, dancing with it-ish. And I was just saying it could be something that's present, meaning a disappointment or a relationship that's transitioning or a loss, or it could be something old, those things in the past, or something even more minor. So when you are, marvelous morning to you. So when we are looking at things from the past, particularly our little child selves, when I say minor, a child is small and everything looks at as big, and so it need not be minor for it to or it could be minor for it to be a big deal for you now. Again, it could be something. You could have pain in the past because you didn't feel accepted as you were, or you weren't able to express fully as you were, and so in some ways you were betraying or abandoning yourself, and that can cause kind of sadness and just disappointment and lack of enthusiasm. And again, some of those things you might be conscious of, and sometimes they just show up in how you think and respond to life as it is. So, from what I have found, we're generally afraid to swim in the pools of pain, emotional pain, because we're not sure we'll make it out. And it seems like if you have a confidence in self, a confidence in life, it can make it available to even explore or open the door. I have talked a bit in this series about teaming with spirit intentionally, and to me that means asking for divine assistance. So whether that is angels, ancestors, God, spirit, etc., saying coming to a place where you are now interested or committed to get beyond the things that you're carrying. Why would you want to do that? Well, because you you might have a heaviness in your spirit. You might feel you can't find your compass. You might not feel like you're open the whole way to others. And so if you think or feel that it might be connected to some things that you aren't willing to feel, ask your spirit to help you, man. It starts to lay this curriculum out in real life. So we've been trained to think that if we want to learn something, we get the book on it. We get the workbook and we do the workbook. And it's not to say that can't be helpful, but it also kind of discounts that we're in this constant dialogue with life. And from what I can tell, like, the classroom, it's here. It's always right now. And it's in your relationships. It's in your inner experience. It's in the events in your neighborhood. It's a constant kind of like, it's almost like hands on the clay on a spinning pot. And they're always there, and it's always sort of like drawing it up. And it's your willingness to be present to that process that seems to determine how successful it is for you. So by just starting the conversation with your spirit or with yourself and saying like, man, I would like to get through this. I would like this to be a little bit lighter. Things will start to be revealed to you. And it could be something like a book. It could be a conversation. It could be a feeling could arise. And so the trick with this emotional processing is when we feel something, we generally want to think about it instead, because feeling is very uncomfortable. So it's like, oh, I'll think about why I shouldn't feel this, or I should think about how they're making me feel this, or I could think about what I'll do in the future so I don't feel this. And the trick is really to be like, shh, and just come into the feeling. From what I've experienced, and same with like witnessing my clients through some of these things, it might seem like you're going into this bottomless pool forever and ever, but sometimes it can be very like short and dense, almost like a rainstorm in Miami, where it's like, sunny, the sky rips open, everything falls out. Sure, thank you. Thanks for coming. And then the sun comes back out. And it does seem like there's an intelligence to the being that can manage, like, okay, what can we process right now? Because that really is what we're essentially doing in the spiritual community. They call it transmutation. I don't really... to me, it seems it's like a reconciliation of it with God, where I'm not afraid of it anymore, and I'm accepting it as part of myself and my experience. And through that recognition, through that realization, it does seem to transmute it or take it to something higher. So when we're avoiding feeling our feelings, we're not only avoiding feeling our feelings, but we're also avoiding feeling our power and feeling our sense of connection and feeling our center and groundedness. So there's a lot of value to get to the other side, but sometimes it can be so overwhelming that it's like, why bother? Why start? If something is so dirty, why even try to clean it? And what I'm suggesting is when you're working with your spirit in this process and you're trusting in it, so you have some level of confidence that it can be done, confidence in yourself, confidence in life, then if you're only working on a chunk of it that day, like, that's enough. Maybe you don't touch it for weeks. Maybe you spend a week in it. But if you kind of take it off yourself to figure out how to do the whole thing, then it makes it manageable to even begin. The other thing that's I think important to note is, so I have this one line that says should, or is, and then above it is should and ideas. There is the pain of experience, there are pains of what happened, and that's kind of like, whether you like it or not, if something hurt your feelings, it hurt your feelings. Like, even if you can understand it, if that's how you felt at the time, that's the emotion that you had, that's yours to claim. And then on top of that, we have like this whole body of thinking that can be like, I shouldn't have felt that, or I should, if we look at loss, for example, as you may know, I lost my sister in 2011, and I did not have any fucking way to, like, I had no idea what to do with that. I actually kind of like dove into fundraising for suicide awareness pretty instantaneously, and like, I just didn't know. And a lot of that pain I carried with me for a long time because I didn't really know it was there. It was just too big for me to even see, almost. And so there's the actual pain of loss, and we all have varying degrees of connection. I had a client who had a really deep connection with a dog, and when she lost the dog, tragically, it really got her. The other adults around her were like, oh, you shouldn't care, it's just a dog. Like, it's just a dog, get a new dog. But for her, like, it really hurt her soul. And so it's not really up to anybody else to determine the amount of pain that you have. And again, it might even be challenging for you to do that. The opportunity is really to validate, this is how I feel. And that's the same as being confident in your ability to feel it. It's okay to feel it. I'll be okay if I feel it. It's okay if I own it. It's okay if I claim it. And then on top of sort of like the event, then like I was saying, we have these ideas about it that can make it worse. So like with the loss of my sister, that kind of blew out into, well, here are the things that shouldn't have been that might have resulted in this. At that time, I didn't have the awareness to say, like, might have. It was more like, my perception is reality. This is what it is. You. Go to hell. I've really grown. You kind of take these stories, it shouldn't have been, as a big story. We truly do not know how things should be. All we know is that they are. And when you start to push against reality, I shouldn't have lost that job, that relationship shouldn't have gone this way, they shouldn't have died, then you take the pain that you would have, and rather than be with the experience, your actual experience, you're with the story about it, and all that kind of like energy is distorted into here. And when you get up here, things get real crazy and real scary and make it very hard for you to be functional. So it's kind of recognizing like, you can't know those types of things. It might be helpful to roll through the details at certain levels, but acceptance is really what makes the space for you to be with your emotional experience, accepting that you don't know if this is right or wrong, or if it should have been or shouldn't have been. It's just, it is. It ended, like, I lost, whatever it is. And you come into that. It does seem like we're afraid, like, again, if we come into those kind of feelings, we'll never rise again. Fucks. Like, if I can still get up, like, you'll be good. Because in my pain, I ran around and created a lot more for myself and for other people. And that looked like not really being able to attach fully, or being, aware of the relationships that I was developing or having, and just a lot of movement. And then there is, kind of waking up to look around to see like, oh shit, what I do. It's almost like when you are operating under the influence of unfelt pain, unfelt emotions, it's almost like, driving drunk. Like you're not seeing clearly. And the people around you can kind of tell, but you're not really necessarily open to that information. One of my best friends committed suicide in 2015. I'm still processing it all. I have tucked it away for so long. I'm sorry to hear that, Kevin. It's a tough death to process. I don't know if you've tried sound therapy, but that can be helpful. Some of the stuff that's old, I lost a best friend in a car accident when I was 16 or 17. Her and her boyfriend died in a car accident. And right after that, I left my high school and everything kind of overnight, and my whole family, and I didn't get to say bye to anybody, and it was this big tragic thing. I moved across the state, couldn't go back. So I had kind of like her loss, which I also didn't know what to do with, and then the loss of basically like my siblings and my community and my life as I knew it, and didn't know how to deal with that. And so I went on into life and did all these other things, lost my sister, lost, a bunch of relationships, a bunch of stuff, and that particular loss of her kind of got buried, and I hadn't addressed it. And when I was doing a sound healing session with my mom, actually, she does tuning forks, it came up. And I saw it and felt it, and I was like, oh shit, that's been tucked away this whole time. And it influences, again, like my availability to connection. Do I want people to be my friends? Well, in some ways I associate that with pain. So it's like, you can be my kind of friend if you sit over there. And so I've really been working over the years to kind of like teach myself the unreality of that. And so at the mental level, you hold those things in presence, you can always step into that power now. So when I forget who I am, or I'm really comfortable or relaxed or in a higher state, I don't need to do the old work like that, like retooling the thinking. That's usually more a function of like, if I think that, if I'm in my mind. And even that, I think there's a level of automatic kind of like your spirit can work with you to help you kind of move those along. I used to do a lot of that work really manually, where I'd make myself pull out kind of like that idea and say like, well, what must I believe to be true if this is how I'm behaving? Or, this event happened, how might that have influenced? Now I sort of like hit stuff, I'll bump into a wall, kind of like in my expression. I feel like it's not full or something, and rather than like dig in with my mind, I sort of like pass it off to my spirit, and I'm like, I'd really like this area to open, like let's do that. And again, like life will have a conversation with me. I'll meet people, I'll do things, I'll feel stuff, and I just have to keep saying yes and allow for it to evolve. Courage is self-search to confidence in self. Thank you for the reminder of self-confidence. Courage is self-search to confidence in self. I think I bet I could kind of guess what you mean, but the way I'm reading it right now, it's not the whole way. Sorry. I think you're saying confidence is an expression, is a compliment to confidence in self. In any case, yes, courage is basically saying like, okay, I can swim across this, blankness. I trust in my swimming. I trust that there's a shore. If you're not really sure of those things, and unfortunately or fortunately, many of us who have had a bunch of rivers to cross, a bunch of shit to cross, didn't really have that training in the beginning. And so every time you get in the ocean, it's like the world is ending. And so there is a level of like meta repatterning where you can just work at the worth level. Like, I don't need to suffer. I can be supported. I can trust in life. Like when you start to work those at the nervous system level, then it makes what comes up kind of like easier and more attractive even to deal with, because you want it to be clean. You want it to go away. You want it to be taken higher. And the nervous system practice, there's probably like a ton of books on this. The way that I've done it for myself is at night or in the morning or different times throughout the day, I'll just take a second and kind of tune into my body and pretend that I really feel like, okay, if I was absolutely safe and cared for forever, if I knew I couldn't be in danger or ever be poor, like what would that feel like in my body? And just practice that breathing and really practicing relaxing my body, relaxing the lower belly, relaxing the lungs, breathing more deeply. Breath work is also something that can be helpful. So I think also as a culture, we've been conditioned to explore, some of these, these pains from like a talk therapy standpoint, and that certainly can be helpful. And then, I was going to say about how medicine has also been introduced, and I think that I don't know enough about that to speak to it. It does seem like there are other factors to consider maybe before going down that path, and also that path can be very valid and helpful for some people. So like, just like I was saying about kind of like the person who lost the dog, like, man, you don't really know what's right for anybody else, and like our focus should really be on like, well, what's right for me right now, which can certainly evolve. There can be steps, like you can step on one rock for another rock to reveal, did it make that first step wrong because you're not there anymore? No. Nah. I think of it kind of like in the video games where you like step on it, you put your weight on it, and then it reveals the next one. So I think also in just being like, that's that confidence, the willingness for things to progress and grow and change. But anyhow, I was saying like, there are all these alternative therapies that can really make a difference. Nutrition, exercise, sunlight, being outside, like these really human things, being around people that respect you, being around people that you respect and enjoy, having hobbies, like all these holistic things really can also help this process along, because you can get lost in your head. And then, like I was saying, sound therapy, what was another modality? I worked with a shaman for a while, did actual energy work. Reiki's been helpful to me. I've worked with a number of mediums and psychics, and most of those are really to facilitate some level of like self-validation. It's like, oh, you know where you are, you know who you are. And for me, that's always been sort of like comforting, just like check for understanding. And again, therapy can be helpful, just sort of saying like that's not the only tool in the box, and sometimes it helps to come at it from all these angles. I think when we're looking at pain too, some of the higher the layers on top of it are like, I shouldn't feel this way still, or I'm embarrassed, I don't know how to handle it, or I'm embarrassed, I don't want to handle it. Like there are these things that go on top of it. Like, I cannot tell you enough, man. Like, call out a fucking village, because it can be done, and it certainly helps to have support, and there's no shame in asking for help. And there's a lot of free resources. A lot of communities have therapy available for free for grad students to get hours. There's a lot of, there are a lot of resources available. And I think coming into it in the mindset that you'll meet somebody or be supported by somebody that fits you is helpful too. Like, don't come at it like, oh, this person's free, so they'll suck. Like, every encounter is divine if you step into it like that. IMHO. And again, that might be a stepping stone activity. So you might make the call, make the connection, start with someone and be like, that's okay. You like stood on that step, that's still forward. Like, just because the first step isn't the last step or the rightest step doesn't mean it was a wrong step. And all that comes back to these ideas that go on top of behavior, on top of life, that make us miserable for no reason, because you can start to self-reflect on your steps and be like, oh, I shouldn't have, I knew better. Why do I always fuck stuff up? Like, you can go all types of ways with it that, one, are generally just because you practice talking to yourself like that and looking at things like that, meaning they're not even the real way to talk about it. It's just how you learn to talk about it. And also, like, it really doesn't contribute value. So that concludes my presentation for today. In summary, I think that the first thing is, again, just to ask for help, ask for assistance. And initially I was talking about that at a guidance level, kind of like working with your spirit, working with your being. I later went to say, like, yeah, and also, like, these different practitioners, you really can't see yourself. You can't see your holes. You can't see your shadows. Generally, you can see them on things around you. You can kind of back into what they might be. But it is helpful to have somebody on the outside, kind of like working with you. And then I was saying that there are some, like, underlying beliefs you can start to play with that make it seem okay to go in there and swim around and, like, pull the plug on it, let it drain, or kind of channel that water somewhere else. Sometimes pain, like the other day, like this month maybe, or last month, I had to come to terms with, like, I might always have it, I'm like, okay, some people, like, okay, so it's then, like, if this is a part of my experience, a part of my life, like, how do I use it then? Like, if this is water, like, that flows through here, or is, a force or power here, like, how can I move it then? Like, what can I do with it? And for me, that translates a lot to, like, this, like what I'm doing now, where I try to find an outlet for it that's, like, natural and inspired. And then I was saying, like, ideas about the stuff can make it worse than what it is. You can also have ideas about stuff where you want to make it less than what it is, but it is what it is. My point is, like, you feel how you feel, and then just be mindful about the stories that you're telling yourself about it. Are you making it wrong in a way that makes it worse? Like, is there a trap door of acceptance? Can you come into it a little bit differently and say, like, I didn't like it, I wish this didn't happen, but it did, period. Because all that other stuff, like, that, for me anyhow, and for what I've seen, that translates to, like, let me figure out stuff so I can control everything and everybody. And, that looks like your life just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and you can't even really do it. It's so crazy. And what you're trying to do in that is avoid pain, but you actually cause yourself more pain because you're constricted from life. Humans are so silly. We're so cute. And if that's something you're doing, you don't need to be mad or sad about it either. Like, in some ways, that's perfect. So just accept and roll. Tuck and roll with it. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. This will be on youtube.com/@ShayleeEdwards. I've got several series running right now. I also work with clients one-to-one and help create not help, but, like, I create custom paths for them towards themselves beyond certain things. I do that intuitively and with, like, in combination with thousands of hours of experience, and so I can help somebody kind of, like, move through their own stuff and find and connect with their own sense of power and their own voice and their own intuition, because a lot of this is really, like, letting it be you and yours, which means it's going to be different than other people. So sometimes it's helpful to have some language to use and some more concrete tools to use, and kind of moving along that so you don't think that you're making it up or you're crazy, which are fun experiences, but only to a point.